Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our Team Tuesday. This week we have with us Armin Mandara. Hey Armin, welcome back.
Hey Vasco, thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. So Armin, Tuesdays is of course Team Tuesday here on the podcast, but before we dive into that, what's the book that most influenced you in your career as a Scrum Master?
I could list a few, and I'm sure many of them which are known in the community, the Scrum Mastery, the coaching agile teams, the Scrum doing twice the work in half in time. But I'm sure your viewers know these. What I want to recommend at this point is, and it's a great transition actually from our last episode, what I can recommend is Radical Honesty by Brad Blanton. I stumbled upon it a couple of years ago in 2018 or so. And what this book is about, it teaches us how we can connect better with ourselves and better connect with others by being radically honest with each other. And I think it's very important for leaders, for Scrum Master to have that ability to really tune into the emotions of yourself and also in others so that you can respond accordingly. And if we think of being honest, or if we think about the concept of being honest, we first think of just not lying, right? But this book dives way deeper than this, because we think as, just not purposefully saying what's not true. But the more common way of bullshitting, of lying, is actually withholding what we think to be true, right? So, and I think many of us know the situation. Somebody makes some comment, somebody does something that we don't agree with, and we already feel something happening in our body. We might get angry, we might get offended, but we don't say anything.
And I think one of the things that you just said is actually quite important. There is one aspect of honesty, and I'm talking about self-honesty, being honest with ourselves, that is even so much more critical, because it goes to exactly what you just said, which is that we feel the emotion, but we have been trained and taught to hide the emotion, but not from others, because we can't hide it from others. We hide it from ourselves, right? Like we push it to the back of the brain, put it in a box, close it, and throw away the key, and therefore lose all ability to be aware of what is going on at that moment.
Absolutely. And he actually talks about this very phenomena. He says that as children, we are fully authentic. We express what's ever happening with ourselves. And everybody who has kids or nieces, nephews sees it. They can laugh and cry from one second to another. And there is some sense of beauty to that. But when growing up, we learn to attach these emotions to some form of rules, because we learn, if I yell now, I don't get that toy. Or if I cry now, I get yelled at. So we figure out that we have to manage our emotions in such a way where we can actually get what we want. And to some extent, this is of course healthy and just part of growing up and becoming an adult, but it can get pathological levels, at least to that extent, where we are withholding to such an extent so that we can please others, or that we can come across as a nice person, as a good person, when in fact
as a peaceful and easy Scrum Master.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Great recommendation. We'll definitely put the link in the show notes, and an incredibly important topic, radical honesty. Armin, now we turn our attention to the teams that we work with and how sometimes they become their own worst enemies. So let's dive into that. Tell us a story of a team and walk us through how those small little behaviors kind of spiraled out of control and eventually became a problem for the team.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I'm thinking of one of my first teams that I had as a Scrum Master. And it was a team that was responsible for quality assurance and managing user acceptance testing. So it was not a fully cross-functional team. And it was not that big. It was four people. And all in all, the team was working well, I would say. They were doing their job. They were delivering on time. But I did notice a few issues at the team. One thing was that the workload was not distributed very equally. Some people were doing more than others. Some people were doing very much more than others. So there was one thing. There was also not a lot of conversation about how we can improve. I did notice a few inefficiencies, some problems, like some stakeholders never gave any feedback and they just didn't do anything about it or had some conversation of what we can improve. So I did notice a few things, but when you would have asked the team, they would say, everything is fine. Everything is perfect. No real reason to improve. And I did notice a certain lack of conflict, one of the dysfunctions that Patrick Lencioni is talking about. And although there were some obvious issues, like one team member taking forever for something where other people are much more faster, nobody will talk about it. Nobody would have the courage or probably also the trust to have these kind of conversations or go into such a conflict. So there was this, let's say, illusion of harmony where everybody would say all things are good, but if you dive deeper, there were quite a few things that you could have improved. So that was an obvious
But that was
error.
your view, right? Like your view is that there's quite a few things that can be improved, but the team was still not necessarily aware of that.
I would say the team members individually were aware, but there was not an open conversation about the issues that were at hand. And it took me actually some while to also get the trust of few individuals of the team to actually then speak up openly, at least in one-on-ones. So, and that was my approach to the solution. So I would have one-on-ones with people. And I remember a specific moment where I talked to one team member, and he was a great colleague. He was putting in great effort. He was actually one of the main drivers of the team. And we had a conversation, and I started to bring up some issues that I observed, talking openly to him. And that was a trigger for him actually to speak openly now with me. I was the first one to say, I think this and this is a problem. And then he started to talk. So it was some form of culture in the team where we just accept that we work together, we do our job and things are fine. But there was a lack of deep and honest conversation about the.
What do you think was triggered that in the meeting, in the team? Sorry, because I understand that reference to the lack of conflict by, of course, from Lencioni's The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I totally understand that. But of course, the lack of conflict, which can be observed, doesn't necessarily tell us the root cause. When you look back at that story, what do you think was creating that inability to have productive conflict in the team?
Mm-hmm. I would say it's two things. One is they were still delivering what they had to deliver, right? So there was not this felt sense of pressure to improve. Nobody from management or nobody else was complaining about things not being delivered, things not going the right way, they still got by in terms of doing their job. So that was one thing, the lack of pressure to improve. And the other thing is also to draw the connection to radical honesty. I believe it's very difficult to engage in such conversation. You don't want to cause harm. You don't want to make other people feel uncomfortable. And it is difficult to tell to your colleague, hey, I'm not happy with how you work. I'm not happy with how much you deliver. So that's not easy. It does require a set of skill and a set of courage to have that conversation. And I believe that's what was missing. They valued keeping harmony over having necessary conflict to improve.
And that's actually a very important aspect of the whole story by Patrick Lencioni in The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, right? If we value harmony over progress, then ultimately the results suffer. And it could be that the results suffer in the end, like we can't deliver, that would be one. But it could also be that the results suffer in the sense that one team member has to carry the weight of the whole team. And that will lead to resentment and eventually disengagement, and even that team member leaving at some point, right? Because if you don't feel that the others are contributing at the same level you are, then you're going to stop wanting to contribute at the same level as well. So it can be quite a self-destructive pattern.
Absolutely. I fully agree. And it does come at the cost of results. And it does also come at the cost of our own peace of mind and peace of soul. Because if there's something that we want to express to our colleague and we don't do it, then everybody might be familiar with the situation that something happens at work. It bothers you, you don't express it, and then you keep thinking about it. You keep rehearsing in your mind all the things that you could have said.
And you keep being afraid of talking about it, and you keep suffering from not talking about it. It's like it's this negative spiral.
Absolutely. And again, Brad Blanton talks very much about that in his book. And it boils down again to being honest to ourselves and to our colleagues, and to give us the chance to go into fruitful conflict so that we improve our results, but also we nourish our peace of mind.
And respect ourselves. Well said.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Armin. What a great story. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Vasco.
Tuesday is Team Day here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. But tomorrow we talk about something that goes beyond the work we do with the teams. We will talk about how to lead change and what our guests have learned from leading and participating in change programs during their career. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.